Welcome to the Real Estate Association weekly meeting sponsored by the Center of Real Estate at California State University, Fullerton.
How's it going, guys? I'm Alex. I know it's a new face today. Gilbert was kind enough to let me start practicing because I'm going to be the next president for the club. So, We have an exciting meeting today. We have Nick Gould from the Gould Group here. He's going to speak to us, give us a little insight of what he does in the industry. But firstly, just want to cover a couple important things that we should go over. So, number one, we have our IREA skill badge. It's for budgeting and accounting. We have 10 people right now. I highly suggest signing up. It's a great opportunity. As an accountant myself, yes, it might not be the most electric thing out there, but it is very necessary. I'm sure, it's for real estate. You need accounting. You need the numbers. You need to understand the financial statements. And budgeting and accounting will teach you a good chunk of that. So,
And it's less about accounting and more about budgeting. So it's what should you think about? What are the budgets that you need to think about when you're managing a building or if you own a building? So if you ever want to own investment real estate, this is an excellent class. And how much is it to sign up?
it's $90, and you can access it on our Instagram. We have the link there for you. Just fill out your information, and that's a one day I believe. So.
And if you need financial aid, please email me or come see me and we will find something.
Yep. And we also have our ICSC trip that we take every May. It's in Las Vegas, and our board actually got together recently and we came up with a list of about 20 people who we thought really deserved it this year. You guys stuck with us, you kept showing up and you showed interest, and we're very excited for you guys. You definitely deserve this, and it's a good opportunity. I'm sure, Sam, it's a good opportunity. We got to meet a lot of successful people, not only real estate, just any sort of business. You're just going to get a lot of connections, and come prepared, and it's going to be a good time. I paid minimal cost. The school actually reimbursed me $50 when I went last time, so that's another great thing. We also have our competition. We need to get everything done by April 1st, so if you were interested in competing in that, last time we went, I believe we won $3,000, so it was a good win, and great experience. You're going up against some of the best universities in the country, like Indiana, North Carolina, a lot of great things there. A lot of good experience for the financial aspect of real estate too. We also have our BOMA Mentee Mentor program. As of right now, we only have one person signed up, and it's myself. We need more people to come, guys. So, but it's a great opportunity. I'm paired up with Mike Kent. It's for asset management, but you can pair up with anyone else that you want. If you're interested in property management, you can just check that box. Asset management, they had acquisitions, all sorts of different things on there. And honestly, you need a mentor in real estate, and it's a great opportunity to get your foot in the door and to really differentiate yourself from everybody else. And you pair that with the skill badge as well, and you got a great resume right there. So a lot of good things coming, and
So explain a little bit more about what the BOMA is.
Yeah. So it's the Building Owners and Management Association of Orange County. And essentially, they pair you with someone who's been crushing it in their field, whatever field it is, whether it's property management, asset management. You can sit down with them. It's kind of like a one-on-one. They're kind of like your mentor in a sense. They give you advice on what you should do, who you should talk to, what you should do early on so you can be successful when you graduate. And yeah.
And how much does that cost?
It's $0, yeah. Wow. A lot of these things you should really take advantage of now, because when you do graduate, like ICSC for example, that costs thousands of dollars to do. But with us, it's minimal, very minimal cost. I don't remember paying anything actually, maybe like a couple things for food or something. But yeah, and then finally, and last but not least, we have Nick Gould here from the Gould Group. You've spoken with us before, yeah. And he has a lot of good insights about real estate in Southern California. He's been doing it for over 10 years. It's multifamily investments. He's the CEO and broker of the group as well. And he's going to speak to us today. So thank you very much. And without further ado, Nick Gould, everybody.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
Good.
I'm Nick Gould. As they said, I'm the CEO and founder of Gould Group. We're an investment real estate company here in Orange County. Our group is a boutique multifamily brokerage, so we focus only on private capital investments in multifamily, so apartment buildings. Really sort of anything from a triplex up to like 50 to 100 units. Once you start getting over 100 units, you start to move into sort of an institutional size space where we deal primarily with private capital investors. So just high net worth individuals, doctors, lawyers, people who have bought properties over their lifetime, 40, 50 years, and have ridden the appreciation wave. A little bit about me, I sort of took an interesting road to get to real estate, although I've had a passion for real estate sort of since I was about your guys' age. I got my real estate license when I was 18, and I got my broker's license at 24. I was obviously scared some points in my life to make that full dive into real estate, just because as a broker and an agent, it's a $0 game. It's sort of an eat what you kill business, and that can be a nerve-wracking thing for especially a young person that's just getting out of college and trying to find their way to make that sort of a jump. So after I graduated from college, I ended up going into the technology field, and I worked at a few startups, and I ended up actually at Salesforce.com, a Fortune 500 technology company, which, looking back, I learned a lot from those experiences, especially in the use of technology, which is something that our firm is a big believer in. We're leaning into social media, we're leaning into AI, we're leaning into database and relationship management systems, and finding ways to find and win business, because it is a lot of competition out there. And so I've taken a lot of that tech background that I had and tried to apply it to the real estate industry. And so I think we're sort of leaning more on the forward edge of real estate brokerage, where so many of the legacy brokerages out there are sort of looking backwards and maybe not thinking about what's 10, 20, 30 years down the road, and where that's something that we are. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. Ever since I was a kid, I was the one who was knocking on doors, selling this or that, mowing lawns, just anything I could do to sort of put myself into a good position financially. And so real estate was always something that I obviously had passion about. And as I've gotten older, I've only fell in love with it even further, and I think it's a great opportunity. Some of the opportunities that you guys have are incredible, like getting an opportunity to do things with BOMA and with ICSC, like going to ICSC, it's huge. You've got every major shopping center owners, restaurant companies, they all have real estate arms, so you don't necessarily have to be in. I'm here to talk to you about my company and why it's a good fit for a lot of people, but I realize that it's not for everyone. But being able to be exposed to these opportunities, I think, is really powerful. So I would say take advantage of it, because it does get expensive to go to these conferences and stay in hotels in Las Vegas and pay for the conference, meals. Go if you can. Next slide. So a little bit about the Gould Group. When I decided that I didn't want to be in technology and I wanted to be in real estate, I realized that I needed to go learn from someone. So I ended up going and working at one of the big commercial real estate firms, and I was a runner. I sort of just did whatever the broker I was real estate in general, you really have to be comfortable talking on the phone, being on in person. And so what we've really decided to do ourselves, and it's really about client experience. We don't deal with corporations. So we're really about building with our clients and helping them understand the different dynamics of the multifamily market here in Orange County. Orange County market, part of our growth strategy is starting to look at some other markets, getting into the Inland Empire, getting down to San Diego. Valuation, a $30 million. Los Angeles. So we are looking at sort of I've done very well in the Newports, Costa Mesas, apartment buildings that resources. And so there's a lot of opportunity for. So we're really looking to expand the company sort of with a fresh approach, right? Where there's a quote that's always stuck with me from Richard Branson. It's that you train people so well that they can go work anywhere, but treat them so well that they want to stay and work with you. I think the technology industry is very big on that, right? Like Salesforce, their thing is Ohana, a family. Everybody is working sort of in one direction. And, you know, when you get into real estate, you'll find a lot of brokerage houses. It's what's in it for me for the broker that you work for. And as a sort of a new person coming in, you do a lot of the hard work. You're doing 90% of the rowing of the boat. And you sort of start to get to a point where you're unhappy and you end up going trying to make a negotiation with the broker. They don't usually want to move, and then you end up moving on. I really want people to stick around. I look at the business sort of like a family, right? We're all in it together, and we all need to be rowing the same direction. And as a matter of fact, Johnny here is working with me right now, and I think he can sort of attest to some of the things that we're working on and just the general vibe of being in the office and working with the team, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's like super, I would say, family oriented. Everyone's super close in the office. It's a good time as long as like, I feel like if you like to talk to people and you're not like shy about meeting new people, going in person to meet someone random, like it's an awesome time.
Yeah, it really is. And we had our first meeting last week. I've never met this owner. Johnny Gould called him. We set up a meeting and we went and met with him at Starbucks for coffee, and you know, what we thought might have been a 10-minute meeting ended up being like an hour and a half, right? And that's the relationships that we are really focused on building. It's not thinking about it from a transactional standpoint that it's like, okay, if I have this meeting, I'm going to close this deal tomorrow. It's how can I plant the seeds today for the growth of tomorrow and 5 years down the road from now? Because a lot of the things I'm closing and doing business on today were things that I've started working on 5, 6, 7 years ago and started planting those seeds. So it's really about nurturing relationships, and it is a long game. You know, you have to be ready for a few years of short-term pain for the longer-term gain. And once you get there, I mean, the world is your oyster. You can literally do anything you want, right? You're your own boss at that point. Next slide. So why Gould Group? You know, we are a small company. We're a growing company, and we've taken a lot of market share from a lot of the bigger commercial real estate companies because we are more nimble, because we are more forward-leaning. And so there's a lot of room to grow at the company, right? I mean, there's untapped resources. There's unlimited upside. The prices of these assets continue to move up. We earn a percentage of the sale price, and it's very easy to make a very, very strong living in this business with a little bit of effort. And you know, thinking about just the Orange County market, some interesting data from like CoStar, which is a commercial real estate publication company. Orange County has the second lowest vacancy rate in the country, but it also has one of the highest employment rates in the country. So there's a lot of people with jobs that make good money, and there's not a lot of housing to go around for them. And the barrier to entry to buy, you know, your first single-family house or your first condo is very challenging. And so the apartment market continues to be a very robust way for investors to put their money to work, while you continue seeing rising yields in those assets. And then I think it just sort of touches on a preferred asset class. Really, I would say the two like hottest classes of commercial real estate are multifamily and industrial, so like things out in the Inland Empire. I like multifamily better. I think that's just because it's what I sort of spend my time doing. It's an interesting, no deal is the same and no property is the same. So you're constantly sort of doing different things. Where a big industrial building, they're all sort of the same. Big four walls, racking, power for the machinery running around in it. Where with apartments, you've got different unit mixes, you've got different owners, you have different tenant bases, and so it's sort of a juggling act to try and figure out the best solution to get the deal from a prospect to a listing, and from a listing to an escrow, and escrow to close. Next slide. So, sort of what we're looking for, and I wanted to make what I'm standing up here talking fairly short and really focus on Q&A with you guys. But what we're really looking for is for people that are driven and passionate about real estate. It's not an easy job. It's not a standard 9 to 5. It's something that the first several years you may put 12, 15 hours a day in, maybe 6 days a week. I don't like to sugarcoat that. It is a very, very hard industry to get into. But if you have that long-term growth mindset, you can make it. I mean, it's sort of a numbers game, right? If you make the calls, if you talk to the people, you have the meetings, you will do deals. And this is a really big thing that I'm big on, is attitude over talent. It's not easy when you pick up the phone and somebody tells you to F off, literally, and then you got to pick the phone up and call the next person on your call list and have that resilience to sort of go in and say, hey, I'm going to keep doing this. No matter how many times I fail, I'm going to stand back up and I'm going to keep doing it. And so having a positive attitude on it and realizing that you are putting the work forward will win over talent any day of the week. One thing that is really big, and I'm sure a lot of you are working on, is having a real estate license. And really that's universal for anyone that comes and speaks to you about being in real estate. Having a real estate license just opens up so many doors for an individual to be in the business selling commercial, selling single-family houses, selling shopping centers, leasing shopping centers. But also if you're working at a company that has a real estate arm, understanding the laws, the regulations about sales, the disclosures, the process, all of that stuff is really, really valuable. And so if you can do it now, which I think Johnny's told me that there's ways throughout the program here where you can actually get your real estate license before you graduate, having that at graduation when you're ready to go into the workforce full time is a huge advantage that you would have. That's really, I think, all I have. I think that's my last slide. Yeah, thank you. If you scroll down to the bottom, if you scan the QR code, it'll take you to our website. And then, really, I want to open it up for questions. Yes?
So I noticed that you do on investment, you do the brokerage, so you get these assets for your investors. Do you help them find property management or asset management, or you do that in-house, or you do that as a separate entity?
Yeah, great question. So we don't focus on property management. It's a labor-intensive business, and it's a lot of work, especially on apartments. If you have a 20-unit building and every unit has a bathroom, you've got 20 toilets that you have to worry about and 20 tenants that you have to worry about. I don't want to be involved in that. That's just me personally. It's a very time-consuming process. I would rather be focused on helping sellers, which is our primary role. We are a listing agency. We help sellers get the highest price with the best terms for their properties. And then, yeah, substantially, we do end up generating buyer activity, right? We put properties on the MLS, we put them on LoopNet and Cruxy and CoStar, and then we get buyers that come in through those channels. And through the cold calling, you start to develop a relationship with the people who are active buyers in various markets. So you know when you have a listing in, say, Costa Mesa or Huntington Beach, you've got a short list of 5 or 10 investors you know that like those types of assets, so you can call them first. I would say it's sort of like 50-50 in terms of us representing buyers or sellers, primarily sellers, and then buyers tend to come in just through the channel of our marketing. Yeah.
Where are you guys located?
We're in Newport Beach. Yeah, right over off of Von Carmen and MacArthur, just by the airport. Yeah.
What year did you start your company and how long have you guys been up and running?
We started the company in the middle of 2022, and I was sort of building it on the side while I was working at another brokerage company. Because one thing that I was big on is if we were going to go out and market ourselves, we needed to make sure and have an established looking brand. Even though we're a young brand, I didn't want us to look like we didn't know what we were doing, right? So we really focused on, branding, logo, getting the website developed, right? Making sure that everything was set up, making sure all of our marketing packages, because when you list a building, you need to be able to put together an offering memorandum to market out to people. And we wanted everything to look very cohesive, right? And so I left the other company at the middle of 2023. So we've been in business as the Gould Group operating for about a year and a half. And last year we did, I think, just under 70 million in sales. And that came from maybe 14 assets. So, you're talking about average sale price of, between $2 and $4 million on these assets, right? So that's why I like it a lot too. You can sort of work in sort of the higher echelon, right? Where if you work in residential, because there are a lot of residential agents that sell these types of properties, but if you're selling condos at $600,000 or $700,000 a piece, it takes a long time. You have to have a lot of velocity in sales to hit the same sort of earnings that you might be able to selling $3 and $4 million apartment buildings. Yeah.
So with that, because that's kind of like at the end of COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel that it was easy to get the ball rolling really quickly, or was it a slow?
Yeah, for me, it was sort of a little bit easier. One, because I was already doing this. I was already working these specific assets, these specific owners already. So it was really just pivoting from doing it for someone else to doing it for myself. And so I already had my database established. No surprise, I use Salesforce for my database. I mean, I didn't like working at the company, but I really like the technology that they provide, and I think it's put us sort of leaps and bounds ahead, right? Just from being able to follow up with people and set reminders and have call lists, so that way we're making sure and we're hitting people every 30 to 45 days and staying in front of them. Because it really comes down to timing a lot of times, right? You talk to somebody one day and they're not a seller, and then next thing you know, if you don't call them 45 days later, you see it pop up online with some other broker because you didn't make the call. But in terms of like the COVID piece, we only saw a very, very small and very short slowdown because of COVID. And I think it was a false sense of uncertainty, because what it really did is it exacerbated the need for housing, which is what we really do. We provide housing. And you saw the price of single family homes in a lot of these markets jump 10, 20, 30% almost overnight. And so it forced a lot of people to remain renters. And so then the landlords now have the opportunity to start raising the rents incrementally. And so that just continued moving up the values, because a lot of our value is derived based on the income that the property generates. And so if your property doesn't generate solid income, you're likely not going to be able to sell as high of a price as somebody who's got closer to market rents. Yeah.
You said you started off with a real estate license. Was that in residential?
Yeah, so the California real estate license is sort of universal. You need it to sell houses, you need it to sell any real property. You also need it for leasing, and if you were going to manage someone else's property. So my first experience in selling real estate, yes, was selling residential. When I was 18, I had a family friend. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and she owned a real estate brokerage. She said, hey, if you get your real estate license, you can come and work for me. And so I got my license, and at 19, I sold my first house at her company. And then, you know, I was still in college at the time, and then the great financial crisis hit, and I said, hey, I'm transferring down to San Diego State, where I did the remainder of my undergrad. And, you know, the market was pretty depressed at that point, so I really focused on school at that time. In hindsight, I sort of wish I would have got back in, although I love what I learned from the technology industry and all the tools that I have sort of at my disposal. And our willingness to think outside of the box, right? A lot of brokers, they want to think inside of the box, and I am very big on, hey, if you've got an idea, let's execute on that idea, right? And so one of the things that we're leveraging is AI tools. In fact, I was just at a conference before I came here, and one of the speakers was talking about AI and leveraging Anthropic and ChatGPT and all these different tools to try and help you create content, help you look at financials, right? It used to be if you got a financial statement from an owner, I needed to go through and plug it into my Excel modeling tool, move this around and move that around. Now, I can literally plug that into an AI tool and give them my template, and it will sort of do a lot of the legwork for you, right? So we're really trying to think on the forefront on how to get to the end goal. If that answers your question. Yeah.
Do you suggest that most students start off in residential, or is that not like, is there a rule maybe?
No. In fact, I think if you have a passion for some specific type of asset, if you really like shopping centers, or you really like industrial for, you know, your family's involved in it somehow, I would say get into what you want to do as quick as possible and stick to it, I think is even more important, because I have seen a lot of people where, you know, they graduate, they go to work at CBRE and they're working on a retail sales team, or they work at JLL or one of these big firms, which, look, there's a lot of advantages to working at those firms too. They have a lot more dollars to put into training, right? And they have programs that they can put you through, where your training with me is sort of you and me. You're learning directly from me, right, at this point. But what they do is they start in retail and they realize that either it's too hard or they're not making the success that they want to see in that year or 2-year plan that they thought that they were going to have, and then they jump ship. And they still want to be in real estate, but then they end up going and they try industrial. And they try and do that for a year or two, and then they end up jumping again. And every time you're starting over, right? You're losing that database of prospective buyers or sellers or lessees and lessors, right? And so you end up doing all this work, and maybe the payoff is in year 3, and you leave in year 2, and you lose out on all those gains. So I would say my biggest thing is if you pick something, try and stick to it. And it doesn't have to be residential. It's a great place to learn, but I also think there's a lot more people in that, and so you have a lot more competition in those deals.
I have a follow-up question about your brokerage.
Yeah.
How do you keep it tight and close-knit and more of a family-oriented when it's just so, I believe it's so competitive in some brokerages?
Yeah, and so that's something as we're sort of growing the business that we're really thinking about. I think one way, especially to keep the sort of competitiveness in between people in your own agency, is to put people in patches, right? To have a target market that one person works and they live and breathe. So it's like the person who I'm really looking for is going to work sort of like the central Orange County market. So like Anaheim and Garden Grove. And there are enough properties in those 2 markets to make millions and millions of dollars over a career. Like if you really hone in and focus on it. Where I see the interpersonal issues happening is when you have one guy calling, or two people calling through the same market, and one of them finds a deal that the other one has been working on, and then you get into this interpersonal conflict, and then you have to find a way to create sort of some common ground. But then I think it's also just about like having some fun while you're at it, right? Like we closed the deal and we went over to the new Northgate Market in Costa Mesa, right? And we spent the afternoon eating good food and, you know, laughing about this and that, learning about each other, right? It's not just about the deals, it's about building and understanding each other and then I think it's also about finding where people's strengths are, right? Like, I think so many brokers, they grow too fast, or they try and add this person on when they really need to be adding this person on. So for me, it was my first role that I hired for was sort of an executive assistant, somebody to help with just sort of the day-to-day behind the scene work, because it was taking up too much of my time and I wasn't able to get on the phones, which is where sort of my strong suit is getting on the phones, setting meetings, and then working through trying to get valuations or provide information on the market and building the relationships. And so we have that now, and so now we're really focused on how can we continue gaining market share against the bigger competitors, which is what we're really looking for at this point.
And then follow-up question, because I know you were a guest speaker last semester.
Yeah.
And Johnny took it upon himself to reach out to you and
Yeah.
ask for a mentorship.
Yeah.
I want to ask both you guys, so what have you learned from that? And then vice versa, what have you learned having a freshly faced realtor? You have your license, right?
No, not yet. Hopefully soon.
So a freshly faced college student,
Yeah.
enthusiastic, so let's start with you first, John.
Oh,
And
man,
Johnny?
like, what's up?
I need you to stand up there so
I
you
got
can
you,
get
I
on the
got
videotape.
You didn't know you'd be presenting. Maybe I should go sit down.
Yeah, maybe I'll just take over
Yeah.
now. Well, I feel like I've learned everything. I mean, I haven't learned everything, but I knew nothing before, and Nick has definitely helped me like with every step of the process, teaching me how to make calls, what to say, what not to say, how to react to people over the phone, because people can definitely get a little bit crazy here and there. And I've learned how important like the marketing aspect is. I help out quite a bit with the marketing. Just spreading the word of the company, I feel like is huge. Just once someone hears Gould Group, then they'll be like, oh, he sent me this thing with this property, you know. But everything's been great.
Well, I think you also have a big advantage too, because Johnny literally sits right outside of my office, and the walls in our office are pretty thin. So he likely gets to hear almost every single conversation that I have throughout the day, right? And when he started, we've sort of been midstream in listings, in escrows, in proposals, in various marketing of things, in various meetings. So I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've gotten a great chance to sort of hear a great subset of like the entire process in a 3-month period in time. And I think for Johnny, I mean, I think the attitude over talent, like Johnny is talented because he can be personable on the phone and is personable on the phone, but he has a great attitude. He comes in every day wanting to get better and wants to help. And so that, to me, that's huge. Like, you just can't teach that. And so I think he's been a great asset to the team. I mean, I'm hoping he sticks around for the long term.
Thank you.
I had a question about just like the cold calling aspect.
Yeah.
Is there a script that you guys follow, or is it more of like a free flowing kind of?
Yeah, so it varies. There's a few talk tracks. The broker that I sort of learned from, he always sort of was like, and this is sort of dating him, but you know, like a tape recorder, right? It's like you rewind it and you replay the tape recorder over and over again, right? And it's like, it just becomes like memory, where it's like, you could be typing on your computer and have your earpiece in your phone and like know exactly what spiel you're gonna drop, you know, your first lines, right? Whether it's, hey, we just listed a building in your neighborhood, or we just sold a building in your neighborhood. One of the things Johnny's been working on, and this is a really big piece that I did, was rent surveys. A lot of owners don't know what the market rents are for their neighborhood. And so if we can provide that information to them and somehow find a way to get a meeting out of it, that just helps us move from sort of the underling to the trusted advisor role. And that's really the end goal, is to become that trusted advisor for the client.
And just comparing that comp for that rent, that's
Yeah.
pretty much nurturing that relationship. So if they do come on the market, they're gonna be like, oh, I remember Johnny, man, he did those comps for me. I ended up bumping my, because multifamily are income-based appraisal. So
Yep.
they're like, oh, they just bumped, you know, I just won whatever appraisal just because they helped me increase my rents gradually
Yeah.
and competitively.
Yes, and also it gives you another talk track, right? If you provide that information for them, and if you get a chance to meet them, the next time you call them, it's not, hey, do you want a rent survey? It's, hey, it was great meeting you at Starbucks. You know, hopefully you found value in the information. You know, it was great learning about your family or your vacation to here or there, right? And it's like, then you're building a relationship. Now they know you, you know them, and people end up doing business with who they like at the end of the day. If they don't like you, they're not going to do a deal with you, especially as big as these deals become.
Any other follow-up questions, everybody?
How big is your group?
There's 4 of us right now. So me, Johnny, I have an executive assistant, and I have somebody who's part-time in marketing.
How many agents? So it's only four.
Me and my assistant, he is a licensed agent, but it's basically, I'm the agent right now. So last year was a busy year. I mean, we
14 deals.
14 deals, yeah. And you know, I mean, we had a big portfolio client that we helped. They're a $1 billion sort of a private equity firm that buys and sells various asset types, and they had a portfolio of apartment buildings that we helped them sell last year. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you didn't really want anything to do with property management.
Yeah.
Do you have any type of like personal investment in real estate, or it's mostly just like your company, because that's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I own my own property, but the majority of the investment right now is in building the company itself. And look, I have referral sources for management. If there's somebody who I'm talking to and they say, hey, I'm having an issue with my current property manager, do you have somebody that you can refer me to? I have those people already in place. And they have 5,000, 10,000 units under management. It's a lot easier to run a management company when you have that sort of scale, because you already have the maintenance personnel, you already have the technology tools for payment processing, right? For sending in a maintenance request, all of those sort of things built in when you have that many units under management. We just don't have that, and so it's just not where we focus our energy. Yeah.
So you said your bread and butter is like coastal Orange County.
Yeah.
And I know the LA fires kind of, mixed up the whole market. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of those people are moving down to Orange County, and obviously the coastal area. So
Yeah.
how's that impacted?
I mean, there's definitely a pickup in demand. More from, at least my view, more from the single family. I'm seeing a lot, because I do track single family just because I like buying houses. But we're seeing a lot of houses go on the market and get gobbled up very quickly, and it seems like it's sort of more recent, post-fire, and I think you've got a lot of wealthy people from the Palisades who are looking for sort of greener pastures, and Orange County sort of tends to lean more conservatively in a lot of things. And I think a lot of people got disingenuated when there was no water coming out of fire hydrants. And so they're saying, okay, well, let me maybe move to Orange County where things are maybe ran a little bit better. And so they're buying up these houses. Now the apartment buildings, I think there's been a flight from the LA markets to Orange County for the last couple of years, and I think a lot of it's like the ULA, that's the mansion tax, which applies to investment real estate as well. I don't know, do you guys know, are you guys familiar with that? So in the city of Los Angeles, they passed, it's called the ULA, but it's sort of been dubbed the mansion tax, and it's, I forget the exact percentages, but at a $5 million sale, it's, I think, 2% tax, and on anything 10 million and over, it bumps up even higher. And so you're losing a lot just giving it to the government, basically, right? And so people are saying, okay, well, I don't want to deal with that. There's a lot more tenant protection rights, like in the city of LA, and cities like Venice. And so they're saying, all right, we're going to move our assets down to Orange County because it is more conservative. There's still rent control in Orange County. We still have the same problems in terms of tenant profiles and, you know, squatting and things like that. But it is a little bit more favorable, and so you've just seen sort of a migration outside of the fires, but yeah.
So on that same note, I know Huntington specifically, they have like kind of a more conservative
Yeah,
leaning, like a lot more than even the surrounding area.
yeah.
How has that impacted like that market, do you feel?
Yeah, I think Huntington's a great market. In fact, we just closed on 1031 exchange. A guy sold an apartment building in Costa Mesa, and he bought one downtown Huntington Beach. I think it's partially because he lives in Huntington Beach, so he liked having it a little bit closer to him.
Right.
But yeah, downtown, even all of Huntington Beach, I mean, it's a great,
It's thriving.
it's a thriving market. Yeah, you know, you've got really high prices, really low cap rate environment. I'll be honest, none of the deals that I sell really make any economic sense. There's not a positive cash on cash return for almost anything that we sell. But if you price things appropriately, you'll have a line of buyers looking for them, just because there's not enough housing to go around.
How has like the low income housing kind of mandates impacted things?
Well, it's really hard from a development standpoint. At the beginning of the year, I sold a 12-unit building in Costa Mesa, but it was on like an 1.5 acre parcel. And we had a developer under contract to build new housing on it. And because of the affordable regulations and given where the pricing is to acquire even just the land, it didn't make any sense. The developer couldn't make sense of it. Really, the only development that makes sense is on a much larger scale. You really need to be developing like 500, 600 unit apartment buildings in order to get the economics to make sense, to not have a 2-bedroom unit renting for $9,000 a month or something, to have it make sense. Affordability is huge, right? And I think that's sort of a driver in a lot of the legislation around rent control and rent caps, which we've seen in like cities like Santa Ana has put its own citywide rent control bill in. But it's really hurt the values of the real estate, and it's caused sort of a flight from those assets to places like Huntington Beach, right? Somebody would rather sell a 20 or 30 unit apartment building in like a Santa Ana, right? And have a 5 or 10 unit apartment building that's easier to manage in a much better location. Maybe they don't make as much income, but you get the appreciation from being in the coastal markets.
How difficult was it to do that 1031 exchange? Did you do that in-house or did you sub that out?
So we don't do the accommodation. There's a company that will put it out to that basically facilitates the trade. But we sold the down leg, so the property that the buyer of the Huntington property bought. We had originally listed the Huntington property. A buyer came in like that, but he needed to sell his property.
Within the Center Exchange timeframe?
Well, he wasn't even listed. So we listed that building, and within 7 days, we were under contract with a buyer on that one. So we sold both deals, and we repped both sides on both deals.
Oh, so you did dual agency?
Yeah, so basically we did 4 deals in 2.
How complicated was that? Because I know it's not really.
It's a delicate balance. Dual agency is definitely a balancing act between making sure that the seller feels like they're getting a win and the buyer feels like they're getting a win. So it's a juggling act, right? There's little things here and there. I always look at every deal like 2 negotiations. You've got your negotiation to get to the contract price, and then you have your negotiation on a renegotiation. So we don't do, differing ourselves from like the residential space, we don't do any showings, we don't do open houses, because there's tenants in place, we don't want to disrupt them for sort of looking loose, right? We want to make sure that you've got a qualified buyer, showing proof of funds, showing the ability to obtain financing before we even open the door for them. And so once you open the door for them and they go walk through, I don't even know sometimes what they're gonna find. I mean, you may find plumbing issues, you may find electrical issues, you may find, what's the worst thing that I've seen? Probably a hoarder is probably the worst that I've seen. And, you know, so you have to sort of navigate these things. And once you see them, the buyer says, okay, well, I've agreed to this price, but given all this new information that I have and maybe hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of work to get that up to speed, I can now only pay this. And so you're sort of negotiating a couple of times. Now, when you have the other property that you need to sell, you know, you're trying to keep the fire underneath people's feet to continue moving the deals forward towards contingency removals and towards a close of escrow at the end of the day.
Thank you. Any other follow-up questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's two, I think kind of tied together.
Yeah.
So how do you, like, what's your like typical day or week? And like, how do you structure your tasks? And then like, what's the process of like making the deal and everything? So like, kind of how do you structure your work?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm an early riser, and I'm a big believer in like physical activity as a means of like burning off some of that excess energy. So I'm usually up pretty early and I get my workouts in. My life has changed a little bit because I have a 2-year-old son and my wife works full time and we don't have any like family, so we're sort of a little bit of a juggling act, and I take mornings, she does afternoons. But when I first got into the business, it's really like, you know, I was up at 4:30 or 5, I'd get to the gym, get my workout in, get home or shower at the gym and try and be to the office by like call it 7. And I would work until about 7 or 8 every day. I try and block out my cold calling hours because I think that's like the most important thing, especially early on in a career in real estate or commercial real estate. Sort of like from 10 to noon, and then from call it like 1 till 4, I would really hone in on my calling. That's all I would do. I'd try and turn my email off. If I had research to do, that was like the 7 to 10. I was working on updating contacts or sending follow-up emails or working on mailer campaigns. But those, you know, 10 to noon and then 1 to 4, those were always my cold calling hours. And I focused on those a lot. And my first year in the business, I think I made 15,000 cold calls. I was in the office on Saturdays. I knew that if I put the time in that I would get the rewards in the long run. Now that sort of changed a little bit, obviously from the family dynamic, but also I'm working on deals and we're pitching deals. So a lot of my time is now spent looking at analysis and making sure that our marketing brochures are right when we do take a building to market, or for example, like the portfolio that we just pitched. It was sort of a market that I don't work a lot. So I spent a lot of time getting to understand the market, making sure that when I went in to present this, because I was brought in by a law firm to pitch their client, that I made not only the client feel good that they spent the time with me, but I also made sure that the law firm felt good for bringing me in, and they bring me in again, right? So I spent a lot of time on making sure that I was prepared. I listen to the Calm app a lot, and LeBron James has a segment. I don't know if anybody's listened to it, but I was listening to one this morning, and it was like the champion's mindset, and he talked about a lot of, like, yeah, the game is one thing, but it's the preparation that you do for the game that separates the winners and really the losers, right, at the end of the day. And so we focus a lot on preparation. The last thing I want to do is go into a pitch and have either an error in my presentation or not be able to have at least some sort of an answer. Look, nobody's perfect, and you can't have every answer to every question, and you shouldn't pretend to have every answer to every question. But you need to be able to talk logically about the property, about the condition, about what you know about the market, the comparables, the various metrics. And so that really comes into your preparation at the end of the day.
When you don't have that answer to a question, how do you kind of handle that?
I mean, I think honesty is the best policy. I don't think there's anything wrong with not knowing the answer to a question. I think if you are prepared for most of the conversation, there's one or two things that's like, one, I look at it like a great way to follow up with somebody, right? If you don't know the answer on this, it's like, hey, you know what, let me look at that and get back to you. But like I've watched like Selling the OC and Selling Sunset on Netflix. I'm sure everybody's watched some episode of that. And I remember watching this sort of younger agent and an open house or a tour. And, in residential, you need to know like the schools in the school district, right? She knew none of that stuff. It's like, well, she's definitely not getting that business because she knows nothing, right? You need to at least be dangerous and like have enough knowledge to be dangerous, but you don't have to know everything to be successful. Yeah.
Are you excited or concerned about like the lifestyle centers that are being developed, like kind of like Bellaterra and Huntington, or like the one in Anaheim next to the
Like mixed use, like
like the mixed use development?
for our business, no, not really, because we work in such sort of a niche of existing real estate, right? A lot of those buildings that are being developed,
It's just apartments.
well, they're being developed by multi-billion-dollar organizations, right? They're institutional grade, they're funded by life insurance companies. We don't play in that space. I sort of tell people, I deal with my grandparents, basically, on a lot of these transactions. It's people that are in their 70s, 80s, 90s that have either owned the buildings or their kids are inheriting the property. And a lot of it's older real estate. A lot of the properties that we sell were built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s primarily. And so it's aging real estate, but from a redevelopment standpoint, say like a 4-unit apartment building, if you had a catastrophic loss, say like in the Palisades sort of thing, like a fire, you can't rebuild what's currently there because of setbacks and codes. The cities just won't let you put it there. So, but then on the same token, there's laws that are saying you can't reduce the number of units on an existing site. So if you had a catastrophic loss and you had 4 units, you can't put 3 back, even if the code says. So you have to find a way to get to 4 or more. Yeah. And it's expensive. And then to build that, now you're talking about those $8,000 and $9,000 rents for what are like an 800 square foot apartment. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so what we're seeing is sort of a modernization of existing assets, because there's a lot of issues like with insurance right now where a lot of these buildings are uninsurable because they have old electrical panels or old plumbing or roofs that are faulty. And so the insurance companies are making you update these things. And so people are just trying to modernize the current real estate. And so it's just continuing to make it more valuable.
Yeah. Have you seen an uptick in ADUs?
Yeah, it's a big thing that we talk about. Especially in some of the coastal markets, given where we sell buildings on a price per unit basis. If you can build an ADU for $250,000 or $300,000, but it's worth $500,000 or $600,000 once it's completed, it makes sense to do that build. So yeah, we see a lot of people. In fact, I'm working on an ADU project myself right now. So I think it's a great way to go. And the barrier to entry for the smaller apartment buildings is a lot easier from a financing standpoint. And if you can find something that has a little bit of extra room or a detached garage that you can convert, it's a great way to add value.
Any other questions? We're all good?
All
Thank
right,
you so
thank
much.
you.